My daughter thought I'd never find out what she did with my house, until I walked in on the meeting she forgot to cancel. In that moment, everything I thought I understood about my family, about trust, loyalty, and the bond between a father and his child, was ripped away. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. 3 months earlier, I could never have imagined such a betrayal. At 58 years old, I believed I understood my family and that our bond was unbreakable. My home, a modest 2-story house with a white picket fence and the oak tree I planted when my daughter was born, had always been a place of comfort and trust. I had raised my daughter Jessica here with love and sacrifice, and in return, I expected honesty and loyalty. That expectation would soon be shattered. It started innocently enough. After my wife passed away 4 years ago, the house felt far too quiet. So when Jessica and her husband, Greg, offered to move in to help out, I welcomed them with open arms. I was grateful, if I'm honest. Having my family under one roof felt like a blessing. Mornings were no longer silent. I'd wake to the aroma of coffee and the sound of my 8-year-old granddaughter Sophie giggling in the kitchen. In those early days, I remember thinking how lucky I was, a doting grandfather, surrounded by family, in the very home I built with my late wife. It felt like a second chance at life and laughter. The first small changes were easy to overlook. Jessica rearranged the living room to make more space, moving my favorite armchair out to the garage without asking. Greg started handling the grocery shopping, saying I should relax and enjoy retirement. I appreciated their help, though a part of me bristled at how quickly they assumed control of household routines. Still, I brushed aside any discomfort. After all, they meant well, didn't they? One warm afternoon, as I watched Sophie play on the tire swing hanging from the old oak, I remembered the day I first hung that swing for Jessica. She was 5 years old, her blonde pigtails flying as I pushed her higher and higher, her laughter ringing through the yard. I had spent an entire weekend constructing that swing set just to see her smile. Memories like those were why I never doubted my daughter's heart. She grew up in a home filled with love and honesty, values her mother and I did our best to instill. I was certain Jessica had absorbed those lessons. That certainty made it easy to ignore the early warning signs. At the time, Greg was between jobs and money was tight for them. I never hesitated to help. I insisted they stay here rent-free and even covered Sophie's school tuition when they fell behind. It's what family does. But perhaps that generosity planted a seed of expectation. Over dinner one night, Greg casually mentioned, "Dad, have you ever thought about setting up a power of attorney or updating your will? You know, just in case something happens." I nearly choked on my pot roast. The question was jarring, coming out of nowhere. Jessica shot him a sharp look, and he quickly added, "I mean, for your peace of mind, of course." I forced a chuckle and assured them I'd handle my affairs when I was ready. The truth is, I already had a will naming Jessica as my primary beneficiary. She knew this. The sudden concern about power of attorney felt odd, but I told myself they were just worried about me. It was easier to accept that explanation than to consider darker motives. In the weeks that followed, more little incidents piled up. I remember a morning when I walked into the kitchen to find Jessica sorting through the mail, including a bank statement with my name on it. She looked up with a start, then smiled innocently. "Oh, I was just organizing the mail, Dad. You always say how clutter makes you crazy." I nodded slowly, taking the papers from her hand. Nothing was missing, but the fact that she'd opened my financial statement nagged at me. Later that day, I discovered that Greg had set up online access for my utility bills and was paying them without asking me. He claimed he just wanted to take the burden off my shoulders. While I appreciated the help, it felt as though responsibilities were being quietly pulled from my grasp. My autonomy, the simple act of opening my own mail or paying my own electric bill, was slipping away before I realized it. Still, I swallowed my pride and thanked Greg for being so attentive. On the surface, nothing they did was overtly wrong. How do you complain when your daughter and son-in-law are taking care of chores and finances for you? To any outsider, I was a lucky father with devoted children. So I silenced the small voice in my head that kept whispering that something wasn't right. It was a Sunday afternoon when Jessica broached another delicate topic. I was pruning the rose bushes out front, and she stepped onto the porch with a glossy brochure in hand. "Dad," she began gently, "have you ever thought about downsizing? Maybe moving somewhere easier to manage?" I straightened up, garden shears in hand, and gave her a puzzled look. She handed me the brochure. The front featured smiling seniors by a pristine clubhouse, a new retirement community on the edge of town. "I'm not moving to a nursing home, if that's what you're asking," I said, half joking to hide the defensive edge in my voice. My heart thumped unevenly as I flipped through the pamphlet. The apartments looked comfortable enough, but they weren't home. They weren't my home. "It's not a nursing home, Dad," Jessica insisted. "It's independent living. They have a pool, group activities, you'd have friends your age around." She smiled, but it looked forced. "We just worry about you alone in this big house. It's a lot to maintain." I felt a flush of irritation. I wasn't infirm or senile, I mowed my own lawn and climbed ladders to clean the gutters just fine. "This house has been my home for 30 years, Jess. I'm not interested in leaving it," I replied firmly. My daughter exchanged a glance with Greg, who had stepped out to join us. "Of course, it's just an idea," Greg chimed in smoothly. "But if you ever did consider it, we could help. Maybe we could arrange something like, we take over the house, and you'd have the finances to enjoy that community without worry." There it was, barely concealed beneath the veneer of concern. The offer to take over the house. I looked at Greg, then Jessica. A cold, discomforting sensation crept into my chest. Had they just offered to buy me out of my own home? Or worse, were they expecting me to hand it over? Jessica quickly added, "Only if you want it, Dad. No pressure. We just want you to be safe and happy." She put her hand on my arm, smiling that warm daughterly smile that used to melt my heart. I managed a nod and muttered something about appreciating their concern. Then I went back to pruning roses, cutting off living blooms with perhaps more force than necessary. That night, I lay awake in bed with my thoughts churning. The idea of leaving my home, and the way Greg had jumped at the notion, left a bitter taste. I tried to dismiss it. My own daughter wouldn't scheme to push me out of my house, would she? She had grown up playing in these halls, doing homework at this kitchen table. Surely her concern was genuine. I stared at the ceiling until well past midnight, fighting the growing sense that my trust was being slowly betrayed by the very people I loved most. A few days later, Sophie and I spent an afternoon together at the park. It was one of our little routines. Wednesday after school, I'd take her for ice cream or to play while her parents ran errands. That day she was quiet, pushing herself on the swing with a frown. "Penny for your thoughts, Soph?" I asked, giving her a gentle push. She bit her lip. "Grandpa, are you really going to move away?" The swing nearly slipped from my grasp. "Move away? What do you mean?" Sophie dragged the toes of her sneakers in the dirt to slow down. "Mommy and Daddy were talking last night. They said you might go to a new home. A retirement place." She struggled with the phrase. "Mommy said I could have your room once you got settled." I felt as if I'd been punched in the gut. They were discussing this in front of Sophie, treating my relocation as a given outcome. My hands trembled as I steadied the swing. "Sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice as gentle as I could, "I'm not going anywhere right now. Okay? I love my house, and I love being here with you." She twisted around to look at me, her big brown eyes searching mine. "So you're not leaving? Promise?" I forced a smile and Pinky promised her, even as my heart thundered in my chest. "Promise." She smiled in relief, launching herself off the swing into my arms with the fearless confidence only a child has. I held her tightly. But over her shoulder, my gaze drifted to the horizon, and my mind raced. Jessica and Greg weren't just idly considering the idea, they were actively planning my departure. Possibly even assuming it was a done deal. By the time I brought Sophie home that evening, I had resolved to find out exactly what was going on. The uneasy pieces of the puzzle, opened mail, probing questions about my will, brochures for retirement living, were arranging themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. The very next week, I got my chance. I mentioned at breakfast that I'd be driving into the city that Thursday for an old friend's retirement party. In truth, there was no party, I simply wanted to see how Jessica and Greg would react to the idea of me being gone for most of the day. Jessica's eyes lit up before she quickly masked it with a concerned frown. "Are you sure you can handle the drive alone, Dad? Maybe we could go with you," she offered. I assured her I'd be fine and insisted they stay home. The moment I left the house that Thursday morning, I felt a pang of guilt for the little deception, but it was quickly smothered by determination. I needed to know what my daughter was planning. I didn't go far. I parked my car at a coffee shop 2 miles away and called a taxi back to the neighborhood, not wanting my return to be obvious. It was just past 1 p.m. when I quietly walked up the block toward my house. An unfamiliar silver sedan was in my driveway. My heart thumped. Through the front bay window, I could see movement, Jessica and Greg sitting at the dining table with a third person, a woman in a blazer, papers spread out before them. I crept up to the door, which was slightly ajar, a sign of hastiness or overconfidence, I wasn't sure. Voices drifted out, low and serious. I recognized Jessica's tone, she was using the polite, sweet cadence she always adopted with strangers. "We can list the property as soon as the paperwork is sorted," I heard the stranger say. It sounded like a woman, likely a realtor. "But I will need the homeowner's signature on the listing agreement." Greg's voice followed, confident and smooth. "Frank, my father-in-law, already agreed to everything. He's just not able to be here today, but we have his power of attorney." I felt my blood run cold. Power of attorney? I had never given them that. Greg was lying without hesitation. "All right," the realtor replied, a note of caution in her voice. "If you have that document, I'll need a copy for my file." There was a shuffling of papers. Jessica spoke up, her tone dripping with assurance. "Of course. We have it right here." I leaned closer, every muscle in my body tensed. Paper rustled, perhaps a forgery of my signature authorizing them to act on my behalf. My stomach turned at the thought. The realtor cleared her throat. "And Mr. Henderson is definitely moving out by the end of the month, correct? It's a lovely home, but buyers will want to know when it's available." "Yes," Jessica answered swiftly. "He'll be moving to Green Meadows Retirement Community in 3 weeks. We've already made arrangements for him there." 3 weeks. They had planned my removal down to the week. "He's excited about it," Jessica continued, a brittle cheeriness in her voice. "It was all his idea, actually. We're just helping him with the transition." I clenched my fists at my sides. Hearing my daughter lie so easily about me, about my own intentions, was like a knife twisting in my gut. "Excellent," the realtor said. "If everything is in order, we can proceed. I'll just step outside to take some preliminary photographs of the exterior and yard for the listing." Through the crack in the door, I saw the realtor exit to the front porch, camera in hand. Inside, Jessica exhaled a sigh of relief. "This is actually happening," I heard my daughter whisper, an unmistakable mix of excitement and nerves in her voice. "Of course it is," Greg replied. "We've been planning this for months. In 3 more weeks, the house will be ours and your dad will be settled where he can't make trouble." Jessica's voice dropped lower. I had to strain to hear. I hope he'll be okay there. It's nicer than a regular nursing home, but he's going to be so angry." Greg scoffed. "He'll get over it. We're doing him a favor." He can't keep up this place by himself forever. And think about us, for once. We deserve a real home instead of living under his roof. All those years I've busted my butt working, and he has this house just sitting here. It's only fair it comes to his own daughter. My breath caught in my throat. I peered through the gap and could see Jessica's face. She didn't look conflicted, if anything, she looked determined. "You're right," she said softly. "He should have done this sooner. We're just expediting things." I had heard enough. My own flesh and blood was conspiring to rob me of my home, using my love for them as a weapon against me. A hot, roaring sound filled my ears, anger, betrayal, heartbreak all surged at once. I couldn't stay silent another second. I shoved the front door open wide and stepped over the threshold. "Don't let me interrupt," I said, my voice startlingly loud in the foyer. Jessica and Greg both jolted upright from their chairs, papers scattering. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. For a moment, none of us spoke. My daughter's face had gone pale, eyes wide with shock. Greg recovered first, his expression hardening. "Dad," Jessica managed, voice wavering, "what are you doing home?" "I thought you were at the city." "Clearly," I said, advancing toward the dining table, "I should be asking you too what you're doing in my home, with my real estate documents." I stabbed a finger at the strewn papers. My gaze fell on one labeled listing agreement and another that looked like a power of attorney form with a scribble that vaguely resembled my signature. A flare of rage surged through me. Greg stepped around the table, attempting a disarming smile that came off as a sneer. "Now, Frank, take it easy." "We were just, don't you frank me," I snarled, my composure cracking. "I heard every word you said. Planning for months, forging my signature, packing me off to Green Meadows as if I'm a piece of furniture in the way." My voice trembled with fury and hurt. Jessica reached out a hand. "Dad, please, let us explain." I turned on her, the betrayal cutting deeper coming from her than anyone. "Explain what, Jessica?" "How my own daughter decided to lie to me, steal my house, and throw me away like garbage." My throat tightened around the word. "Is that what you're doing? After everything I've done for you?" Her eyes brimmed with tears. "It's not like that. We were going to tell you, when? On moving day. When the nursing home van showed up to drag me off." I shook my head, unable to contain the bitterness. "God, Jess. I trusted you. I trusted you with my home, with my life. And here I find you signing it away behind my back." Greg's veneer of politeness dropped. "We had no choice," he snapped, stepping forward. "You wouldn't listen to reason. This house is too much for you, and we need a place to live. You're a stubborn old man, and you were going to drag this on until you hurt yourself or something." We had to take action. I felt a tremor run through me, not of fear, but of pure outrage. I squared my shoulders. "So your solution was to forge my name and make decisions for me? To decide unilaterally that I'm incapable of living in my own home?" "We were trying to help," Jessica cried. Tears rolled down her cheeks now, whether from genuine remorse or simply the shock of being caught. "You've seemed so lonely since Mom died. We thought if you moved somewhere with other people your age, you'd be happier. And yes, we need stability too. Sophie needs it." The mention of my granddaughter, using her as justification, made my vision blur with anger. "Don't you dare use Sophie as an excuse," I hissed. "She's a child. A child who thought her grandfather was about to abandon her because her parents filled her head with that idea." A soft scuff on the porch made us all turn. The realtor stood just outside the open door, camera in one hand, awkward and wide-eyed. She had heard enough to grasp the outline of the situation. Her cheeks flushed. Maybe I should come back another time," she stammered, clearly uncomfortable. I took a long breath, trying to steady my voice. "I'm sorry you got involved in this, ma'am. But there will be no sale. Not now, not ever. This meeting is over. She gave a quick, sympathetic nod. Gathering her briefcase and camera, she beat a hasty retreat down the porch steps. I could only imagine the story she'd have for her colleagues, about the family who tried to sell a house out from under its owner. The moment she was gone, silence fell in the dining room. Jessica stood trembling, mascara starting to smudge under her eyes. Greg's face was a mask of barely contained fury and embarrassment. I could see his mind working, trying to find some footing now that their scheme lay exposed. "Dad," Jessica began softly. "Please. We didn't mean for it to happen like this." I held up my hand. "Stop." My voice came out cold and unfamiliar. "I can't even look at you right now, Jessica." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I have given you everything I could. I paid for your education, I welcomed your family into my home when you needed help, I have been a good father to you. And you repay me by plotting behind my back to take the last thing I have." "It's not the way you see it," she said, desperation creeping in. You thought you'd just get rid of me and keep the house," I cut her off, my voice rising. "You lied to me every day under my own roof. How dare you?" My hands were shaking with anger. Greg stepped forward, putting an arm protectively in front of Jessica as if shielding her from me. His voice turned scornful. "You're acting like we committed a crime. We tried to do right by you and by our daughter. If you weren't so stubborn, we wouldn't have had to go behind your back." I gave a bark of incredulous laughter. "Forging my signature and faking a power of attorney is a crime, Greg. Shall I call the police right now?" I pulled my phone halfway out of my pocket. I wasn't sure if I'd truly call the cops on my own child and son-in-law, but I wanted them to feel a fraction of the fear and betrayal I felt. Jessica's eyes widened in alarm. "No, Dad, please, let's not go there. We're family." I said bitterly. "Family doesn't do what you did." She began to sob in earnest, covering her face. Greg looked at her, then at me. His jaw clenched. Without another word, he grabbed his wife by the shoulder. "Come on. We're done here." As he ushered Jessica toward the door, she resisted slightly, her tear-filled eyes on me. "Dad. I'm sorry," she choked out. "I never wanted to hurt you." I swallowed the lump in my throat, keeping my expression hard. "You have a cruel way of showing it." At that, Greg practically dragged her out the door onto the porch. I followed them to the threshold. "What about Sophie?" I demanded. "My granddaughter wasn't home from school yet, thank God. Am I even allowed to see her now, or were you planning to steal her away from me too?" Jessica wailed softly, but Greg answered for her. "Maybe it's best if you don't, at least for a while. You'll only confuse her with all this." My chest constricted. The threat was clear, access to my granddaughter was now a bargaining chip. "Don't you dare use Sophie to punish me," I growled. "That little girl is the only innocent party in this mess." He gave me a cold, thin smile. "Then maybe you should have considered that before trying to turn Jessica against her own family." With that outrageous parting shot, he took my daughter by the elbow and walked away. I stood in the doorway, watching as they hurried down the driveway. Jessica was hunched, crying into her hands, while Greg's free hand balled into a fist at his side. He opened the car door for her with rough movements. As she folded into the passenger seat, she looked back at me one last time. I could see regret and fear in her face, and something else that looked disturbingly like resentment. Before I could say anything more, Greg rounded the car, slid into the driver's seat, and they sped off, leaving a cloud of exhaust and dead leaves swirling behind them. I realized my whole body was trembling. I closed the door quietly, locked it, and in the sudden silence of the house, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. In the dining room, a few sheets of paper still lay scattered. I forced myself to walk back and pick them up with shaking hands. There it was, the power of attorney, notarized with yesterday's date, my name signed in looping ink that wasn't mine. Jessica's signature was beside it as the appointed agent. I stared at the betrayal immortalized on paper. A hollow numbness spread through me. I set the papers down. In a daze, I sank into the nearest chair, ironically, the same chair Jessica often sat in for our Sunday breakfasts. How many Sunday mornings had we spent here, laughing over Sophie's latest school antics or reminiscing about her mother? I pressed my palms into my eyes, as if I could erase the memory of the last hour. But I couldn't erase anything, not the sound of my daughter's lies, not the image of her standing with a stranger in my house dividing up my life's work, nor the sight of her retreating from me in tears, my trust in her shattered. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I found myself wandering through the house in a fog of grief. In the living room, I caught sight of a framed photo on the mantel, Jessica's wedding day, 7 years ago. I was walking her down the aisle, her face radiant under the veil. I remember how my heart swelled with pride and love that day. I'd given a speech at the reception, choking up as I welcomed Greg to our family and spoke of how I'd always be there for my little girl. Now my little girl had grown into a stranger who would conspire to take everything from me. My knees felt weak. I lowered myself onto the sofa, the photo still clutched in my hand. The betrayal cut so deep I could hardly breathe. I thought of my late wife. What would Martha say if she were here? We had raised Jessica to be kind, honest, compassionate. I could almost hear Martha's voice whispering, something must have gone terribly wrong for her to do this. But what? Had I spoiled Jessica with too much support? Had I somehow failed to impart basic decency? Or was Greg's influence to blame? He'd always been ambitious, always pushing for more. Maybe he had convinced her that I was just an obstacle. Tears burned in my eyes, blurring the smiling faces in the photograph. I cradled my head in my hands and, for the first time in years, I wept openly. I wept for my broken trust, for the family dinners that would never be the same, for the granddaughter who might be kept from me. And I wept for the memory of the little girl who used to run to greet me when I came home from work, who now saw me as an old fool to be managed and set aside. The next few days passed in a haze. I didn't call Jessica, and she didn't call me. Part of me prayed she would show up on the doorstep alone, apologetic and remorseful. But the phone stayed silent except for one call, from my sister, Linda. "Frank, what on earth is going on?" Linda demanded the moment I answered. "I just got off the phone with Jessica. She was hysterical, said you kicked her and Sophie out and threatened to have them arrested." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. A wave of anger washed over me anew. They had wasted no time recasting the story. "Did she tell you why, Linda?" My sister hesitated. She said you misunderstood something. That you've been very stressed, not yourself. She implied you're having some kind of breakdown, Frank. She's worried about you. They all are. A harsh laugh escaped me. I'm not the one who lied, or forged documents, or tried to sell someone's house behind their back. What are you talking about? Linda sounded genuinely confused. Clearly, Jessica hadn't mentioned any documents. She said she was trying to help you downsize and you exploded at her. My jaw tightened. I exploded, all right. Because she and Greg were plotting to force me out of my home, Linda. They had a realtor here, contracts ready, a fake power of attorney, everything. There was a stunned silence on the line. When Linda spoke again, her voice was small. "Frank, that's a serious accusation." "I'll send you the proof," I replied curtly. My hands shook as I pulled out the crumpled power of attorney document I'd retrieved from the dining room. I snapped a photo of it with my phone and texted it to my sister. "See that? That's my signature, or it's supposed to be." "It's not. I didn't sign that, and yet my daughter somehow had it notarized." As Linda silently absorbed the evidence, I continued, "They lied to a realtor, tried to list my house for sale, and had a whole plan to put me away in a retirement home without telling me. That's what really happened. I heard my sister suck in a breath. Oh my God. Frank, I had no idea. Her tone shifted from doubt to horror. She didn't tell me any of that. Of course not. I slumped into my armchair. I suddenly felt bone-tired. Linda, I don't know what to do. They took Sophie and left. And now it sounds like they're telling everyone I'm unstable. My sister paused, then spoke gently. Do you want me to talk to her? Maybe I can mediate. No, I interrupted. The last thing I wanted was a half-baked apology or more lies fed to my family. This isn't a misunderstanding that a mediation can fix. What they did, it crosses a line. She was quiet for a long moment. All right. But Frank, she's still your daughter. I'm sure in her mind she thought she was doing the right thing, even if it was horribly wrong the way she went about it. I closed the call soon after, assuring Linda I would handle it. I knew she meant well, but her sympathy for Jessica, however slight, only stoked the fire in my gut. My daughter was spreading lies about me now, painting me as the villain. And some people were inclined to believe her unless I proved otherwise. After hanging up, I sat in silence, rubbing my temples. That's when I remembered something, my phone. In the chaos of that confrontation, I'd forgotten that I had slipped my cell into my shirt pocket on silent mode just before I entered the house, its voice recorder app activated. At the time, I hadn't consciously planned it. I think some part of me knew I might need proof of what I was about to uncover. With shaking fingers, I opened the recording file. The audio was muffled at first, the sound of my front door creaking, indistinct voices. I forwarded a bit until words became clear. We've been planning this for months. In 3 more weeks, the house will be ours and your dad will be settled where he can't make trouble, Greg's voice said, cool and confident. I heard Jessica's soft reply, he's going to be so angry. Then Greg again, he'll get over it. We deserve a real home. It's only fair it comes to his own daughter. My own recorded voice cut in, don't let me interrupt, and the ensuing confrontation played out in harsh clarity, every hurtful word, every admission of guilt, every tear and accusation. Listening to it made my hands shake all over again. But it was also illuminating. Taken together with the forged document, it was undeniable evidence of their scheme. Evidence I could use, if I chose, to set the record straight. I copied the audio file to my computer and then to a flash drive, each click of the mouse strengthening my resolve. My daughter and son-in-law had declared war on my reputation and my life. I would answer that attack decisively. If they wanted to tarnish my name among our family and friends, I would make sure everyone knew the truth of what they'd done. My opportunity came sooner than expected. Linda called again that evening, her voice hesitant. Jessica and Greg need to pick up their things from your house, she said. She's asked if I could be there as a neutral party, to avoid any more incidents. I understood. They were probably afraid I'd either refuse to let them in or blow up at them again. Little did they know I now possessed all the ammunition I needed to confront them calmly, and publicly. Tell her that's fine, I replied. Tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock. I'll be here, and you're welcome to come supervise. Linda sounded relieved by my even tone. All right. I think that's best. We hung up, and I spent the next day making preparations. I printed several copies of the forged power of attorney and the listing agreement. I also transferred the crucial audio recording onto an old portable speaker. If Jessica and Greg wanted an audience through Linda, I would make sure that audience heard everything. At 3 o'clock sharp the next day, a car pulled up in front of my house. I watched from the window as Jessica and Greg got out. They had brought a few boxes and suitcases, ready to collect their remaining belongings. Notably, they had not brought Sophie along. Perhaps they didn't want her to witness another fight. For that, at least, I was grateful. Linda arrived right behind them, parking at the curb. As the 3 of them approached the door, I opened it and stepped aside. "Come in," I said evenly. Jessica wouldn't meet my eyes as she entered. Greg gave me a curt nod, his expression unreadable. Linda offered a tense smile and went to stand by the staircase, clearly bracing for the worst. For a few minutes, we moved through the motions. They headed upstairs to the guest bedroom they'd occupied, collecting clothes from the closet, toiletries, the toys and books Sophie had kept in a corner. I waited in the living room, heart pounding, mentally rehearsing what I'd say. I could hear the low murmur of Linda talking quietly with Jessica in the hall, snippets of "had to know it was wrong, Jess," and "I didn't think it would go so far," drifted down. Jessica's replies were too soft to make out. At last, they descended with their boxes. An uncomfortable silence fell as they set everything by the door. It was time. "Thank you for letting us get our things," Jessica said softly. Her eyes were red, she'd been crying again. Greg stood stiffly at her side, one hand on her back. I nodded. "Before you leave, we need to have a final discussion." I glanced at Linda, then back to my daughter and son-in-law. "I think it's important we clear the air about what's happened, what really happened, so that no one is confused." Greg's jaw tightened. "Frank, this isn't necessary. We should just go. We don't want another argument." I held up a hand. "It's not an argument I'm looking for. It's the truth. Linda deserves to hear it. And so do you, Jess, perhaps especially from your own lips." Jessica swallowed, saying nothing. Linda stepped forward, face drawn. "I agree," she said quietly. "We should talk about this. All of us." I took a deep breath. The hurt was still raw, but a calm resolve steadied me. I picked up the sheaf of papers from the coffee table and handed one copy to Linda. "This," I said, "is the power of attorney document I found on my dining table after you left, giving Jessica full control over my affairs. The signature is supposed to be mine." I looked directly at my daughter. "It isn't." Jessica flushed and stared at the floor. Greg opened his mouth to interject, but I continued, "You told a realtor I had agreed to sign this. That I was moving out willingly. That was all lies." My voice remained level, but I saw Jessica flinch at the word lies. Linda gazed at the document in her hand, eyes widening at Jessica's name listed as agent. "Good Lord, Jess, you actually filed this?" I was going to revoke it," Jessica mumbled. "It was just in case he wouldn't listen, in case I wouldn't hand over my house." "You mean," I said sharply. "You plan to use it to sign papers in my name. Don't bother denying it. The realtor heard you claim you had my power of attorney." Tears spilled down Jessica's cheeks. "I know it looks bad. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, Dad." Greg stepped forward, his voice hard. "Yes, mistakes were made. But what's done is done. Rehashing this won't help anyone. We should all move on." I gave him a long, measured look. "You're eager to move on, I'm sure. But I'm not finished." I reached for the small speaker on the table and pressed a button. "Since honesty seems to be in short supply, let's let the facts speak for themselves." Instantly, the living room filled with the sound of Greg's voice. "We've been planning this for months. In 3 more weeks, the house will be ours and your dad will be settled where he can't make trouble." Jessica's recorded voice followed, quiet but audible. "He's going to be so angry." Then Greg again, "He'll get over it. It's only fair it comes to his own daughter." Jessica let out a small cry of dismay, clapping her hands over her mouth. Greg's face went ashen. On the recording, I heard my own voice cutting in, and I stopped the playback. In the stunned silence, only our breathing could be heard. Linda looked horrified, her hand trembling as she lowered the papers. "Jessica." "Greg, how could you?" Jessica stepped toward me, her hands outstretched imploringly. "Dad, I was wrong. We were wrong. Please believe me, I thought I was helping you. Helping me? I echoed, a surge of anger finally breaking through my calm. By plotting to take everything I own. By treating me like a problem to be disposed of. She broke into sobs, unable to speak. Greg moved to put an arm around her, but I wasn't done. I turned my gaze on him. You have nothing to say for yourself, Greg. Or do the recordings and documents say it all? He set his jaw. What do you want from us, Frank? We already lost. The plan fell apart. You got your victory. Why humiliate us like this in front of family? His voice was bitter. This isn't about humiliation, I said in a low voice. It's about accountability. You tried to paint me as the villain. Lied to Linda, probably to others too, about what happened. That won't stand. Not after what you did. Linda stepped between us, tears in her own eyes now. I just don't understand. Jess, you of all people, doing this to Dad. Jessica wiped her face, shoulders shaking. I was scared, she whispered. We have so many bills, debt. When Greg lost his job and we moved in here, we felt like burdens. Dad, you seemed so lonely and sad. When the idea of moving you to a community came up, I thought maybe it could be a win-win. You'd be around people, and we'd get stability with the house. So instead of asking me or talking to me, I said, voice thick with emotion, you decided you knew best. You decided to lie and take it. Do you have any idea how much that hurts? She broke down again. Greg's expression faltered, perhaps even he realized there was no justification that would redeem this. It was wrong, he admitted quietly. We were desperate and made the wrong choice. He held Jessica, who buried her face in his chest. We're sorry. I let out a long breath, the fight draining out of me. Sorry isn't enough to fix this, I said quietly. I'm glad you understand now how badly you betrayed my trust. But I can't simply pretend it didn't happen. Jessica lifted her head, eyes red and pleading. Dad, please. I'll do anything to make it right. I was stupid and selfish. I see that now. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I'd raised, now a 32-year-old woman in anguish, and felt a swell of conflicting emotions. Love, anger, sorrow. I love you, Jessica. I probably always will. But I don't like what you've done. And I don't trust you. Trust, that has to be earned back, if it ever can be. She nodded through her tears, accepting the words as they fell on her like stones. I continued, voice steady. I won't press charges for the forgery or take this to court, though I'd be within my rights. I'm not doing that to my own family, for Sophie's sake if nothing else. But from now on, you're on your own. I will not be giving you any more financial help. I will be revising my will. As of this moment, consider our prior arrangements, any hint that you were going to inherit this house or anything from me, null and void. Jessica bowed her head, sobbing anew. Greg closed his eyes, his face lined with regret. That's fair, he said softly. Linda put a hand on my shoulder. I could sense she approved of my measured response, holding them accountable without destroying them. I turned to Linda and mustered a small, sad smile. Thank you for being here. I needed someone else to see and hear the truth. Then I looked back at the two people who had been closest to me only days ago and were now practically strangers. I think it's best you go now. Jessica stepped forward suddenly. Before I knew it, she had wrapped her arms around me in a desperate hug. I stood stiffly, caught off guard. I am so sorry, Dad, she whispered through her sobs. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I love you. My throat tightened painfully. Slowly, I rested a hand on her back. I love you too, I replied, voice cracking. But I can't live with what you did. I hope you find a way to be better than this. She released me, sorrow etched in her face. Greg gave me a solemn nod. There was nothing left to say. As they picked up their boxes and turned to leave, I added one final thing. Jess. She paused at the door, looking back, eyes swollen and hopeful for the barest second that I might not cast her out entirely. Don't keep Sophie away from me, I said. My voice trembled with that one plea. Whatever is between us, she's an innocent. I'd still like to see her, if not now, then someday when things are calmer. Jessica gave a frenzied series of nods. Of course. I would never. I'll never keep her from you. She loves you so much, Dad. Her voice broke. We'll find a way. I promise. I nodded, a lump in my throat. Greg quietly opened the door, and they left into the late afternoon light, carrying the last of their things with them. Linda lingered behind, eyes full of sympathy. She reached out and squeezed my hand. You did what you had to do, she murmured. I'm so sorry it came to this. I just nodded, unable to speak for the moment. Together we watched through the window as Jessica and Greg gently placed the boxes into their trunk. Before getting in the car, Jessica looked back at the house, our eyes met through the glass. She lifted her hand in a tentative wave. I raised mine in return, a world of sadness and love and regret passing between us in that brief moment. Then she slid into the car and they drove away. After that day, the house settled into an unfamiliar quiet. In some ways, it felt like I was starting over, an old man alone in his home again, but it was a peaceful loneliness, not the suffocating kind that comes from being deceived under your own roof. I threw myself into restoring my routines, tending the garden, fixing the loose porch step I hadn't gotten around to, even reconnecting with a few friends I'd neglected during the turmoil. I wasn't exactly happy, but I felt free and self-reliant. My dignity was intact. The ties with my daughter and son-in-law were severed for now, perhaps indefinitely. Yet one bond held strong, the pure, unquestioning love of a grandchild. In that, I found hope. I climbed the stairs and peeked into the second bedroom, the room that had once been Jessica's growing up, and had later housed her little family. It was empty now, but I decided it didn't have to stay that way. Perhaps I would repaint it with Sophie's favorite color or set up a small bed for her next sleepover at Grandpa's. There was loss in this new chapter of life, but there was also a sliver of light. As I got ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a message. It was a photo from Jessica, Sophie in her pajamas, holding the teddy bear I'd given her for her last birthday, waving at the camera. She wants Grandpa to know she's safe and happy. Good night, Dad, read the caption. A tear slid down my cheek as I typed back, good night. I love you. Then I turned off the lights, settled into bed, and closed my eyes. In the darkness, I knew that come what may, I had stood up for myself and uncovered the truth. And though the ending wasn't the fairy tale I once imagined for my family, it was honest and real. Sometimes, that's the most bittersweet victory one can hope for.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.